We have had an interesting time the past few weeks. Actually, the whole year. It's been one of those times. And it's like, it was interesting to me, I was thinking, turn with me over to Jeremiah. This is our opening verse, because I'm in part 3 of the What's Your Thought? And as we were going through this last week of things, this guy's been going on for a long time. But Deb and I just really try to give everybody the best chance. And what we have wrestled with this last week is something that we never thought we'd have to do or whatever. Because I always have felt this way, and I may get hit after church after I say this, but I figure there's enough things that I wrestle with in my own life and my own problems that I try to be as lenient and understanding with people as I can be. And that's got us in trouble this time, I guess, but not in trouble, because I'm going to show you something here in just a minute in Jeremiah. But the other day, in the thick of this battle this week, the bombardment, and our minds were just, have you ever been in that situation where everything's just coming at you and you just feel beat up in your brain? And the Lord spoke to me and said, what are you teaching? What is it you're teaching on? Authority of the believer. No, he said there was a subtopic right now. What's your thought? And I had allowed this guy to take me to a level in my life I've never, ever experienced in my life before. Because I've had thoughts that I've never had about anyone or anything in 64 years almost. Never. I grew up in a neighborhood where you could have done that kind of stuff, people, but I don't do that. And the Lord said, where do you think the enemy's going to attack you at? Right where you're teaching, right where you're trying to mess up your thoughts. So I have this message, and I knew this was, and I've been trying to get to this point for 3 weeks now anyway. I've had these notes that I'm using today are actually been the tail end of the past 2 weeks. Actually, past 3 weeks, because I preached it again last week. I didn't get in Indiana as the part of the message, and still didn't get to those verses. Well, then I walk into Foundations today, and I'm usually not in there. I'm usually sitting in the room and just meditating on the Lord. Well, I went in there today. I thought, I'm going to go in there and sit. And then Pastor Joe leads us right into, they lead right into where I'm going, and it's like, are you kidding me? But they pulled out a couple of scriptures that I hadn't really explored. And I'm going to hit one of them briefly, but I'm going to take one a little bit more in depth, and I'm going to take it. And the foundation text for this series of these 3 messages has been out of Jeremiah 29:11. But I want to back up, if I could, just to 10, because I think maybe I did that before, but I want to do it again today. In verse 10, it says, for thus saith the Lord, after 70 years be accomplished in Babylon, I will visit you, perform my good word towards you, in causing you to return to this place. And then he goes on to verse 11, he says, for I know the thoughts I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace, not of evil, to give you an expected end. And then you shall call upon me, and you shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And you shall seek me and find me. And you shall search for me with all your heart. A lot of times, and he's saying, look, there's some problems you're in the midst of. But you have to understand how I think about you. What my plans are for you. Don't look at the circumstances you're in. Don't look at the situation you're in. I have a plan for you, and it's going to be accomplished. He says to an expected end, right? Who's expected the end? He already has the expected, but we should be expecting what? When we get into calamity, when we get into situations, what should we be expecting? More calamity? No. How many of us do, though? Because again, remember I said it's like a flood. Now I want you to turn with me over to Lamentations of Jeremiah. It's just right next book over. So just flip over a few pages. Going to go to the Lamentations of Jeremiah. And this jumped out at me. Pastor Joe had quoted a verse further down, but then I was reading, as I was listening to everybody else talking, I'm reading, and it's like, it just leapt out at me, starting to read at verse 19. Now, Rob, I'm going to put it up there. What chapter? Oh, I'm sorry, chapter 3. Put it up there. I'm going to read it out of the voice. But I want you to read along in this, okay? I mean, I want you to see what King James is saying, but I'm going to read it out of the voice because he really, really hits it. Now, we're going to start at verse 16. And he says, "For he crushes my teeth with a mouth filled with gravel. He humiliates me, trampling me into ashes." Now remember, Jeremiah is this. Remember the title. This is Lamentations. He's lamenting. He's feeling sorry for himself. He's feeling down. He's feeling beaten up. Goes on to verse 17. Fragmented, myself knows no peace. It's hard to have peace when you're in the midst of the battle sometimes. But where should we have peace the most? Remember, they say that the safest place, the quietest place in a tornado or a hurricane is in the eye. Because all the turmoil is around it. But if you're in the center of it, there should be a place of quiet there. Okay, now we don't ever get to that because you can't get to it. But they say the center of that hurricane, the center of that tornado, is actually, the hurricane is a better illustration, I think, is the quietest place. It's peaceful. There's nothing because everything else is circling around that area. He says, fragmented myself knows no peace. I cannot remember what it is to be happy. I can't remember what it feels like to be happy, is saying in the voice. Have you been there? It's not a negative statement. We have, haven't we? We allow ourselves. Jeremiah is allowing himself to say, there's no peace. I can't remember what it's like to be happy. I can't remember what it was like to be good. I can't remember what it was like when everything was going perfect. I caught myself this week. I'll just confess. It's okay to confess in church, right? I told Debbie, I said, I long for a peaceful place. I long for a quieter life. And that's that in the middle of the storm where it's just like everything is just coming at you. And I mean, we didn't experience a tornado. I was in the hospital at the time. But I know that the people in the midst of that tornado, they were believing for it to be over. But in the middle of it, all I can think about is I want to be I'd rather be in a different place. I wish this wasn't happening and all this. It could be any situation in life. In verse 18 it says, "Failed, I say to myself, my hope fails in the force of what the Eternal One has done." Now, it says there in verse 18, it says, "I say my strength and hope is perished from the Lord." So now he's really feeling bad, isn't he? He's really feeling bad. Now look at what it says in 19, "Grievous thoughts of affliction and wandering plagued my mind." And it says over here, "Remembering my affliction and my misery is like wormwood and gall. Great bitterness and gall," it says here. Verse 20, "Grieving my soul thinks back. These thoughts cripple and I sink down." Verse 21, "Gaining hope I remember and wait for this thought." Gaining hope in the midst of the struggle. A lot of people don't get to that point. They allow the struggle to just weight them down and they just crumble. And it's, what's your old thing you used to like to say a lot? I don't mean it's negative. I used his illustration a couple of times. Something about, I can't think, it's just beyond me now.
I don't know where you're going, so.
It's about this, woe is me, and I think I'll just go eat
Oh, go
worms.
eat worms.
Yeah, go eat worms or something like that. You know. Kids song, yeah. What is it?
Everybody hates me. Nobody
Nice.
likes me. I'll just go eat worms.
Yeah, there you go. There's a man with kids.
Of course, yeah.
But, you know, so he's at that point, he says, but remembering, gaining hope, he says, gaining hope, all of a sudden he casts his eyes in a direction other than the trouble. All of a sudden, there's this remembrance, somewhere back in here, something clicks and says, don't be like this. You don't have to be like this. Yeah, it looks bad now, but it doesn't have to be bad. Something clicks. Have you ever had that happen? Something back here just like, it's like a snapshot. You know, I have those all the time. Those snapshot thoughts, do you? Where all of a sudden you're thinking something, all of a sudden, boom, there's something. Oh, wow. And you try to grab the rest of the thought. You ever done that? I want to go back there. I want to think that through, you know? And I just figure it's my misfiring, but it's glad everybody else does it too. It says, remembering, I wait for this thought. Verse 22. Now in this one it says, it is my Lord's mercies that we are not consumed because his compassions fail. Now listen, here's what it says in the voice. How enduring is God's loyal love? How enduring is God's loyal love? The eternal has inexhaustible compassion. Verse 23, here they are every morning, new and fresh. Every morning. Your faithfulness, God, is as broad as the day. Have courage for, verse 24, have courage for the eternal is all that I need. That all I need. My soul boasts, hope in God, just wait. When it seems like everything else is crashing in on you, there is no place to go. Can I use your illustration, Rob? The last night of before you really turn things back around? And you can, I'm glad you're waiting a minute so you can correct me if I'm wrong. Rob had been running from God. And he was in this, he was a mess. Am I correct? I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just saying that, yeah, I'll watch that. But he was running from God. And the thing is that all of a sudden, when all else, he was at the very bottom of his well. The very bottom of his well. There was nowhere else to go but God. I watched my son, who I knew where he was at in life, in very short order. It was like a suddenly in our lives. It was a quickening in our lives. And I watched that son, and then I watched what God did in rapid pace. And you all see that today. You know, I'm down there in Kentucky watching not only my biological son, but my spiritual sons preach the socks off down there. And it says something about us as a people. It says something about us as a congregation. But I watch what God has done in both of those young men. You know, I joke with Jack because he was born saved, the whole thing. But there's some trial in that, where he came from as a young man. There's baggage in that also. And I watch what those two young men have accomplished thus far, and where should Jesus tarry, where they're going, where all you guys are going. Well, I would say young legs, but that would leave out Joe and Danny and it's like the younger guys, you know. And that might even eliminate Rob real quick here too. But
Hey. Not me.
Yes, Vince.
Oh, I forgot about Vince. But it's a matter of as we're not getting bogged down because of the struggle, you know. Jeremiah comes out of it because he casts his eyes and his thoughts on the promises of God. So when the calamity comes your way, you have to look at the promises of God in your life. What has he told you that you were going to do? Sheila got up here last year, said, I'm called to preach. Okay. Just because I'm not picking, I don't know if there's any calamity going on. I'm just saying. And does that change because there might be calamity? I know that Solomon's hurting right now. Does that change because of that? Should she get cast down? Should she be derailed by what God's called? No, you don't do that. You allow what God's promised you to come to its fullness. Now, the enemy's after all of us. He can't take our salvation. Right. No one can pull us from the palm of God. But when we succumb to the problems of our life and our thought process, and it's our thought process he's after. But you've not sinned because you've had the thought. It's only implementing the thought into a action that causes sin. But the enemy said, well, you had the thought, you must really be bad. No, I had thoughts the past couple of weeks. No one's ever taken me to that level. No, and I'm serious, since nearly 64 years, I've never had anybody take me to that point. Never, ever. But then in the other side of me, I'm wrestling with, I know God has a plan. I know God has something he can do if I'll get out of the way. And see, Jeremiah was having to get out of the way. He went through all these thoughts, but then he said, wait a minute. God's mercies are new and fresh every morning. We quote that verse all the time, but it's in the middle of a battle. It's fun to quote the nice, cute verses, isn't it? To have that power versus for yourself. But you look at every one of them, they come after some sort of situation That it was a victory statement because they just come out of it, or they're coming out of it. It's not just some happy verse we can plaster up on a wall and go, well, I'm going to stand on that. No, read it in context. Look at the context that it's presented in. Because that's where the courage comes for you to say, God's mercies are new and fresh every morning. Because in the midst of the battle, that's when you got to remember it. You know? And it's like, and so it's like, it's in Romans 12:2. Turn over there. Now, I've hit these a couple, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next couple verses, both in Romans. It said, be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's the process. And that's what Jeremiah was going through in that lament. He was going through this, and then all of a sudden there's this little blink, little click. And his mind now starts being renewed, reminding himself of what God's promised him. God says, I have an expected end for you. Now, I use Dina's in business, so I'll pick on her. I don't mean to. But let's say that thinks she has a bad month. Should she all of a sudden get shaky and worried about it? Or let's say she has a couple of bad months. It's not going to happen. I'm using it as a hypothetical situation. We know it's not going to. But the process is, let's say that happens. Where she needs to be. She needs to stand on what God told her way back. How long have you been in business now? 5, 6 years?
6 years.
6 years. God promised her victory. She dedicated her business to the things of God and the promise that He gave her. So that couple of months, that couple of weeks can't rattle her because why? Now, again, it's easy to say can't rattle her, but if she's feeling it, she needs to remember, no, God promised me this. God promised us this. You know, He says, and so how do you do that? You get into the Word, you listen to the right things. You know, you've heard me talk about, and I won't go into any great detail, when I went through a battle 20-some years ago now, and I got depression. And you know, and I'm not meaning this, please, if you've wrestled with that, or you're wrestling with that right now, do not get offended by what I'm about to say. Okay? Because I've been there. The thing is depression, there is a comfortable place in depression. What I've learned in counseling, there is a comfortable place in depression. And it's a place where it's like, okay, everything's going wrong, and I'm just going to be here, and guess I'll go eat worms type of mentality. Okay? But there is a way out. Okay? But it's a choice. I'm actually preaching, if Debbie's preaching with me, I'm sorry, she's just finding this out right now, so there's a quickening in her life. I have the title for our Saturday night service in Pekin. I don't have anything with it other than the title. You have to choose to be chosen. There are so many illustrations of the chosen, but they had to make a choice to accept it. Okay? So you have to choose to be chosen for what God's promised you. And the only way you do that is you go into and work back towards that when you're off track. Okay? To mess up another, not as in noses, mess up another illustration. I was listening to, because I have a whole playlist I'm playing right now. It's all old Christian music. Rob wouldn't sleep on me. And we've entwined it as like parts of sermons. And Debbie goes, that would just drive me nuts to hear a little bit of a sermon and all it goes kicks to a song. I said, no, because usually it kicks over a song that actually amplifies what I just heard in the message, okay? But I don't remember what I was going to use as illustration there. But the thing is that, you know, when you get into the Word and you allow the Word to move you, and then in my life, music moves me. You know, it speaks to me. But you get into those situations and you start renewing your mind. And you do it in ways, you get into the Word, you say, okay, I need to do that, I need to hear that. There was a song that it was a Keith Moore song. It's not, I've been renewed, I don't think, but it's one of those where he talks about, I choose to, somebody knows this song. How was I doing? I choose to think as you think is basically what I was after. I choose to think as God thinks. I'm making a choice to not think as Bob Martin. I'm making a choice to think as God thinks about Bob Martin. I'm making a choice to think, and when I fall short of things that I feel guilty about, I choose to think of how God sees me. I mean, if you look at the failures in the Scripture of people that were great men and women of God, but look at the failures they made. Look at the things that happened in their lives. We pick on David because he's the easiest and most ready one to get. I mean, there's a guy that stumbled a couple of times. Would you not agree? At least once or twice. Well, what is this epitaph? For all of eternity. What is this epitaph? A man after God's own heart. Why? Because he chose to be reminded at the point of challenge by the prophet or by the Spirit of God to say, I'm sorry, I repent, and it's done. That's all he had to do. I'm sorry, I repent, and I choose to think how God thinks about me. I choose to see me as God sees me. And I don't think David ever saw himself where God saw him. I think David always had a lower opinion because of his background, because of where he came from, because of his family background. But we have to transform ourselves by the renewing of our mind. Okay? Now, in Romans 8:6, it says this, be not carnally minded. To be carnally minded is death. When we start thinking as out of the flesh, it's a killer. It's a killer because it kills everything that we know is true. We start thinking out of our flesh, out of our carnal mindedness. It takes and puts us at a level where nobody can help us, even God. Because in the carnal-minded person, there is no God. Okay? There is no God. And so we start thinking, but he says, but to be spiritually minded is life, and what? Peace. To be spiritual, when we put our focus, when we fix our countenance on God and the things of God, there is life and peace. Doesn't matter the storm that's raging around us. We're in the eye. And the eye is where the peace and the calm is. You don't sense it. You don't feel the swirl. You don't feel any of that. And it's there. Now, those two verses remind us that how we have to think. Now, but Paul gets deeper with how we have to think in Philippians. Turn me over to Philippians 4. In Philippians 4, and I've been trying to get here for several weeks now. Philippians 4 talks about how we're supposed to think. Now, when I deal with clients a lot of times, what I'm trying to do is get them to think differently. And I find myself many times in a session is really just talking to myself, really learning, and God speaking to me about myself and helping them. Because he'll bring something up, and I go, man, I really needed that myself, God. Thank you very much. And it's like it's a freebie for me. I'm giving it to somebody else, but it's like a freebie for me. Because a lot of times when we minister and even when we preach, a lot of times the sermons we preach it ourselves first. It comes to us first, and so we've already wrestled with the message. We've already saw things. Actually, I don't know if this is, to be honest with you, I don't even know. I've heard it so many times, I don't even know if it's actually a passage or not, that it says, preacher, save thyself. I think it's out of Proverbs. Isn't it right?
Physician, heal thyself.
Physician, heal thyself. Okay, so same thing. Physician, heal thyself. Preacher, teach thyself. Why? Because it's important for us to realize that we have to wrestle with our own stuff. In order to minister to other people, we've got to sort of examine ourselves. If a physician, and since I quoted it wrong, I knew it was wrong, I quoted it, it's like, since a physician said, heal thyself, if he's died of cancer, and he's not taking care of himself, how can he treat somebody over here with the same disease? Because he's already given up on himself. If he's given up on himself, he cannot create an atmosphere to that other person that's conducive for healing. If nothing else, than just the attitude. If a preacher gets up here and everything about him is a mess and all that kind of stuff, yeah, he can get up here and he can deliver a 15, 20-minute sermon, maybe. But if that sermon hasn't rooted in him yet, then it's just words. It's not life. And I can honestly tell you this, since I'm being honest in church. Debbie says, well, you're not honest with me any other time. Well, yeah. Take it when you get it. That'd be a crystal boy. Take it when you get it. I got the shakedown of her, too. She's a hoot, isn't she? I went in the other day we had rented a refrigerator car. And I said, well, Rob, and we gave him our old dishwasher to take up. And I said, well, why don't you just take this? It'll be easier to get it into your house with this refrigerator instead of, trying to be all muscle and brawn like he thinks he is still. And so I go to pick, I said, and just leave it in the van, and then I'll take it back. And so I went in to get it at the shop because Crystal was working, and I went to and open up the van, back of the van, and here's not only the refrigerator cart's in there, but the stupid the dishwasher's still in there too. So I pull it out, and there's two parts to this story. I'm only going to tell you the one part.
Yeah, you didn't tell the other part, did you?
So anyway, I pull it out, put it in my car, and I'll finish that in a minute. And I pull up the front, and I say, Crystal, I go, oh, hi, how you doing? I said, tell your husband he's a dork. She says, I do that every day. Now, there's two clients in here, right? They have no idea who I am. And Crystal goes, yeah, I tell him that every day. And I said, well, tell him he's a dork because I left that this thing in there, and it was there, and yeah, she says, I know. And she just, I forget what else she said. She just laughed. You know her laugh. And it's contagious. And it's like, she laughs and says something else back. And I said, and then another thing, and you don't need to tell him this part. You can tell him the first part, not the second part. It does fit in my car if I lay down the seat because I told him it wouldn't fit in my car. So it's like, so I'm taking it back and everything. But it's like, I don't know why I told you all that. Other than the fact, she's a hoot. You know, when you tell her she's got this hat. But when you get, I don't know where I'm at now. If the preacher doesn't absorb it first, and you just think you can push, there's no life to it. And I was going to be honest in church, wasn't I? Yeah. And it's like, there have been times in 33 years of ministry that I know I just preached words. There was no life to them because they didn't affect me. If they don't affect the preacher, how did the preacher expect it to affect the people? And I know there was no life, and it's like, I walk away from it going, well, I was as empty, and I'm empty, after having studied it and preached it. What I expect out of people, got to hear it, and they got all these thoughts going on all over. Because see, I know, I go to church. You know, I was in church all day yesterday. And I was deeply embedded in the first two sermons, because they're my boys. My boys are up there. Jeff waxed eloquent on geeks in government. It was excellent. Rob got up there and waxed eloquent on his part of the light and the transfer and time and all that kind of stuff. Just excellent. See, I did listen. So the next time I ask you, what did I say? You were going to have, oh yeah, you did this, you did that. Because usually if I ask Debbie or Rob, how'd it go today? They go, that's okay. It's good. It's good. Well, what was good about it? Well, you know, I like the way it flowed. They can't give me any details. Now, Rob's excuse is this. I'm worried back about putting that scripture up on the wall. I said, I don't want to hear those excuses. But so anyway, by last night, I'm tired. I'm operating on 3 hours sleep. And we got to drive back last night. We have to leave service and drive back. And the deal was, I was going to drive the first 3 hours, and Rob was going to drive the second 3 hours. There was no second 3 hours. That's all I'm saying. So it's like, so anyway, so I'm going, and usually when I get behind, when I get behind the wheel, it's hard for me to turn it over. So I'm just driving, and I hit second wind, so I'm going. But by Pastor Jack's sermon, I know it was good. I cannot tell you what he said. For a lot of reasons. First off, I decided within the opening few sentences that it was over my head. And Pastor Jack's sermons often do that to me, right? Because he is so good and so knowledgeable, and it's stuff that is so complex, I'm thinking, I don't have time to learn this. But he talked about how this and that and this and that. We have CDs covered, so you can go ahead and listen to it yourself and go, what did he say? It was very, very good. But here's what happened then, is I sort of disconnected for a moment, and I'm thinking about what I have to preach today, things like that, so that's an excuse. And then I'm over here, and all of a sudden I'm starting thinking, and before you know it, your thought takes you. Do you have the rabbit trails? Yeah. Do you start out at the Dairy Queen in Morton and end up over at Peoria at Chuck E. Cheese? Yeah. I never ended up at Chuck E. Cheese. When my great children asked me, want to go to Chuck E. Cheese for their birthday? I said, it's closed today, I'm sorry. It's never closed. It's a lie. It literally does. Who else does it? Yeah, okay. Crystal does it. Yes, even her mom does it. I'm good. And I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad. I figure what they don't know, don't hurt them. That's Professor Joe.
Yeah, but now you have older grandkids that can tell them it's not closed.
Yeah, and I'll say they don't know. They don't understand. Kylie won't tell them that, just the other one. She don't like it either.
Oh,
So-
wow.
So anyway, I understand that you battle through all that. That's why I love Jesse Duplantis, because he'll preach, and all of a sudden he'll tell you a story that causes you to laugh, and he'll know who's with him and who's not. Because they're laughing and they're not. Well, where are they at? So he goes over to that side. Well, I'll preach over here for a while. They're not with me, I'll stand over in front of them. I would do that to Bree anyway, it makes her nervous. But it's like, so it's like, if the preacher hasn't engaged his thought process, he can't communicate to your thought process. So don't be accusing me every time you check out though, because there is your accountability part of it too, okay? Because Pastor Jack did engage his. I disengaged and allowed myself to go down some rabbit trails. And then it's hard to catch back up, especially when you get into the technicalities that he teaches. Because there's a very powerful engineering geek service to the max. Now, Philippians chapter 4, and we're going to look at, we're going to start at verse 4. And it says, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. What a great place to be. But can you rejoice in the Lord if your thoughts are all lamenting? You can't, can you? You can't have victory if you're thinking of all the struggles, if you're thinking of all the problems, you just sit down and that song goes through your head now, and I just stay to eat some worms, whatever the rest of the line is, The thing is that when we rejoice, as long as we're rejoicing, we can't lament over the problem. We can't let the problem dictate to us our circumstances or anything. When we're rejoicing with it. So the first reaction we should do when we start getting into a struggle is start praising God. Because we have an expected end.
That's right.
We have a situation that the enemy is trying to take us off track, but God's already provided a path of victory.
That's right. Amen.
And there's a book out years ago, and I think I skimmed through it. I don't read books until I haven't recently been challenged myself to read a book cover to cover, because I haven't done it in so long. Because I think it's when I went to school so much, I had to read books cover to cover. With college and seminary and all that stuff, I just usually read for chapters. But there's a book called "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff," and the subtitle is "Everything's Small Stuff." Think about it. Everything. It seems like the things that we dwell on and burden down by really is not that earth-shattering.
Careful.
Yeah, careful. It's not.
Earth-shattering.
Yeah, it's that.
Shattering.
Earth-shattering. And it's like we allow the little things. As a matter of fact, Scripture says it's the little foxes that spoil the vine.
I couldn't help it.
That spoiled the sermon, I know that. Took 3 weeks to get past that sermon. Now you got her thought. You know where her rabbit trail just went.
Ours
Stop.
too. We can't say a package in our family without saying something about it.
FX just delivered a package. Really?
I run.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, he says, yeah, he does. Verse 5, but it's like, so when we're rejoicing, we can't, the things, the burdens of life, the problems of life, cannot have victory. Because there's no room for that darkness when you're shining light. And rejoicing in God is shining light, right? Not only to your life, but other people's lives. And then in verse 5, he goes on to say, let your moderation be known to all men, and the Lord is at hand. Now, verse 6 says this, be careful for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto God. In other words, don't be bashful. And don't go, well, God knows. He's God. He knows my problems. So why should I tell him? Well, I knew most of my kids' problems too when they were growing up. One thing is their mom was too lenient. They needed a firm hand. But the thing is that I knew their problems, but I wasn't going, many times I was just not going to jump. I know, even at their adult age, I know a lot of the problems or situations. It's like, I'm just not going to go to them and say, can I fix this? I'm going to wait till they come to me.
Right.
Because otherwise I'm intruding, especially as they're adults, I'm intruding into their space that they have. Maybe they're working through it in another play. Maybe they're trying, maybe something else is going on. But when they come to me, yeah, I can fix that. We can work on that. We can do that together. You know, and it's happened in all of their lives over the years, in different situations, different times. We were there. We were there prepared to help any way we could when asked. And that's God. So don't go, well, you know, why aren't you doing it, God? You know my problem. But you've not asked him to fix. You've not asked him to intercede. That's not to ask, why aren't you doing something? That's not asking him. That's complaining to him that he hasn't done nothing. He should know what's going on in your life. He does know what's going on in your life. But it says here, he says, be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests. Okay, God, you know this is going on. And I thank you that it's complete. I thank you that you are already at work. The Word says that He's working upstream in our lives all the time. So I thank you, Father, that you're there. And my prayer to Him is that every day I want to be where He's at today, at tomorrow, in my life tomorrow. Because He's already upstream. I want to be where He's working at next Sunday in my life on next Sunday. Where He's already at today in my life, which is next Sunday. I want to be there. I want to let Him know, I thank Him that He's already got those answers for me. He's already met those needs. But a lot of times we get into the situation, we get blinded. We put blinders on. And we think we're the only one that's ever experienced that problem. Like God doesn't have an understanding. And then He'll be caught off guard, or He'll think I'm not spiritual enough because I'm having this problem in my life. And the people that He says, well, go to this person and say, hey, will you pray for me? Will you intercede with me? I can't go there. I can't do that because they'll think I'm not that spiritual. Well, God's saying, sort of like that old hymn. Somebody, I thought I was going to say it today. It's like the guy that's asking for help. I thought Vince was headed that way this morning. The guy's asking for help up on the roof. The floods come, and you know the two boats come by, and the helicopter comes by, and the guy stays up on the roof and says, no, God's taking care of it. God's taking care of it. And he ends up drowning, and he goes to heaven, and the guy says, well, why didn't you help me? I was depending on you. So I said 2 boats, a helicopter, what more do you want? Sometimes the help is right there, and we're overlooking it. Because we've not communicated with God. We've not asked God for the direction. Now, in verse 7, it says, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. In the midst of our troubles, instead of thinking about the woes and the problems, and I'm preaching to myself, guys, okay? I heard this message. I've been thinking on these verses for 3-4 weeks, and I heard them this week. Louder than I've ever heard them. And I know why now was the day that I was supposed to deliver it, because it actually got a hold of me. It says, and the peace of God, the first thing that goes in calamity is we let peace go. Now all of a sudden we're frustrated. Now all of a sudden everything's going, and all these thoughts come flooding into your space, into your peace, into your situation. You're allowing it, and it's stealing from you. It says, which passes. The peace of God which passes all. I quote that to people all the time in the counseling office. All the time. The peace of God which passes all understanding. Do you realize that when you get into situations, now I'm hoping somebody's helping somebody. Help me. I'm getting ministered today at any rate, okay? You get into those situations, and your understanding goes out the window. You can't fix things sometimes. And you try to put all these equations together to make it work out. What God's saying, just come to me, let my peace dwell in you, and everything else will take care of itself. It'll be there. He says that the peace which passes all understanding shall keep your hearts and your mind. Your mind doesn't have to get beat up, bogged down. I've never been in a physical fight. Well, I already committed that. Telling you twice. And since I'm already in trouble with her, I might as well just, 2 times in my life I've been in a physical fight. That was my brother. And what always kept me out is I didn't want to get beat up. I wore glasses since 4th grade. I would bust them accidentally enough already without going and getting in a fight and getting broken a fight. And then if I'd have said, well, I got a fight and broke them, and my dad would have probably said, well, did you win the fight? Oh, no. He said, then I'm in trouble again. Not only I broke the glasses, and I lost the fight. Okay? I'm supposing anybody would know. He might have knocked me upside his head. Next time win. You know? But it's like, your mind gets to the point where it feels like you've been beat up. And all you can think about is the calamity. And that's where you have to say, God, I thank you for your peace. God, I thank you for your peace. Your word says that your peace passes all my understanding. I thank you, God, that your peace right now flood me from the very top of my head to the very soles of my feet, cover me like a warm oil from the very top to the very, and let it just saturate me. I thank you for your peace. Because it's at that point now your mind is able to function. You're able to get along. He goes on then and it says in verse 8, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. In other words, saying, make a shift. My first car that I had was an old, I thought I bought it. My dad just leased it to me for a year. I didn't know I was just paying a lease on it for a year. And it was my mom's old car. Because I learned one thing growing up, and I tried to break out of that for Debbie, was that my dad loved cars. I mean, and he liked new cars, okay? And so he would trade almost every year. I think he traded, Mom says he traded one year, he traded twice in 1 year, okay? She was never happy. He'd go down to Caldwell's Pontiac, and Mom would want to go down and firebomb the place, you know, because he'd come back with a new car. And so she had this Corvair. It was a 4-door Corvair. And I remember, my dad would drive these great big, nice Pontiacs and Oldsmobiles. And my mom had she had a green Renault one time. What it was a tin can with a motor. Okay? And it was more unreliable than those Coopers and stuff. What was the Gremlins? It was awful. And then my dad got nice, and they went over and bought another one, a newer one, right? The blue one was that a new car when you bought that? So it was still Renault. Well, then after that, they bought this Corvair. Now Corvairs were Chevrolet's way of decreasing the population of the world. That's why they don't make them anymore. Because if you got hit in the rear end with them, it's going to explode, and you're going to die. That's all it was. So they quit making them. So my dad wanted to pick up truck. Bob's got his driver's license. So Bob needs a car. So he wanted, but the ulterior motive was, Dad wanted to pick up truck. So he was willing to give up his Bonneville, Pontiac Bonneville, to Mom so that he could get a pickup truck. In order to do that, he had to sell her on the fact that Bob needs a car. So my first car is this 4-door Corvair with a 3-speed on the floor. You could run faster up the hill than it'd go. But it's my first car. I'm excited, so I went out and bought a really cool gear shift now. It was wood, had chrome on the top, and I was hot rodding it. And so I'm learning how to drive. I learned how to drive in an automatic shift car, right? Power steering. The Corvair didn't have power steering. You had to do this number to turn this much. So we take my mom to work. My dad said, well, you guys need to take mom to work and then come back. And he said, I want you to go down North Adams. And she would work downtown Peoria at Carson's. Go down North Adams and come across that bridge instead of coming across the interstate bridge. Well, so we're tooling along, my brother and I, and we're driving. There's this really nice GTO in front of us. And I'm thinking, that's a really nice looking car. And there's a car wash. There used to be a car wash on North Adams up there where the McDonald's is right now. And we're driving along, and the guy puts on his blinker. Okay, no cool. You know, we're talking, and I downshift, and I go like this. Now I'm used to driving a power steering car. But I go like this, and the car just keeps going straight. I go like this, and I clip the back into this GTO. And it didn't really do much to that car, but I went out and looked at my car. Oh man, it's all crunched in. So the driveway had time, pulled in the driveway, and this is on the passenger side. It's all crunched in like this, and a friend of mine came over. I'm dreading my dad pulling, right? So my dad pulls in the driveway behind the Corvair in his truck, gets out of the truck. Well, I see you didn't wreck it. Fire, just flooded. I'm crying. My buddy goes, I'll see you later, Bob. Bye. My dad comes around the car and he goes, what the? I almost said, what? He wasn't saved then. What the? Did you hit Robert Allen? I knew I was messed up. When he says Robert Allen, I'm in trouble. And I wanted to say, it was your fault. You teach me how to drive in a power steering car, you take me to Peoria in a standard car, and you take me down the busy street in Peoria on a Saturday. I couldn't say that. But anyway, it's like, so, why did you tell your story? I was just like, see if you're listening. Virtue.
Yes.
You get all these things when you get into calamity. When you get into calamity, all that, when I'm standing there with that Corvair and it's wrecked and everything like that, and I'm thinking my dad's going to kill me. He's just going to bury me in the backyard. We had trees and bushes back there. Nobody know. It's just one less mouth to feed. And all these things go through your head and all this kind of stuff. And the Bible said, what's Paul saying here says, if there's anything in you, the smidgen of stuff, think on those things. I don't care how small it is. Don't think on the calamity. Think on what's pure, what's virtuous, what's good. He says, think on those things. Think on what's lovely. In the midst of us, I'm a good husband, guys. Just trust me. You have to climb a long ladder to get where I'm at. I knew Debbie. Debbie's having a rough week. It was a rough week. She's battling the knees. We've been Santa Fe battling that. We're battling this guy. And so I'm sitting there, and I have a picture of her. I have so many pictures on my phone of her. This is one that was taken down at the Burger Barge. And she's sitting out there. It originally has Patty in her together. I cut Patty out because I never had her picture of there when Debbie's. So it's like, I have Debbie, and she's got this beautiful smile, and she looks so gorgeous and everything. And I put on Facebook and said, every time I look at that smile, I fall in love all over again. And then I put another picture of her when we were dating, going to prom, and the smile's never changed. Her smile, and it lights up every day. When I see her smile, it doesn't matter what's going on in my life, it all straightens out. What's ever lovely, think on those things. Think on the things that make your life enjoyable. Think on those things that are more volume than the little problems. We get so bogged down by problems. We think that I hear people come in marriage, all problems all the time. I'm probably out of time, Martin. No, come in marriage problems, and they say it's always been. They've been married 20 years, and the marriage has never been good. You're just now coming for counseling. I hear that all the time. I hear it all the time. I know that's not true. I know that they have forgot what was good, what was virtuous, what was lovely. They forgot all those things. And I try to take them back to a time that it was good. So I'll start sometimes way back. Tell me what it's like when you got married. Tell me why you fell in love with him. Tell me why you fell in love with him. Tell me why you said I do. You know, when you get to Rusty and Regina's years of marriage together, when you get to that level, there are a few months ago, so I'll give them the credit today. When you get to that level, you've endured a lot of stuff. But if you focus on the stuff you had to endure, then you forget about the stuff that just sort of came easy. Because when marriage is good, it comes easy. But don't ever get duped into the fact that it's easy. It's a lot of hard work to get to their level of longevity. It takes a lot of time. I was saying about that. Rob, I fell asleep on me last night. I was talking to him, I was realizing he's sleeping. He doesn't listen to the word I'm saying. Because when I drive, I'm thinking, and and there's somebody with me, so I don't have to talk about what I'm thinking. It must be really boring because he went to sleep. But it's like I'm thinking about all the struggles that Deb and I had earlier. I'm thinking, God's really been good to us because we had stuff that we should have broke us apart in the very beginning. First 4 years of our marriage, we only lived together a year and a half. And then coming out of the year and a half, about a year later, I tell her I want her best friend. I don't want her anymore. We shouldn't be married today. But we're moving on 45 years. Now, she got retribution. We saw that best friend a few years back around holidays, and she hasn't aged real well. So we came out of the store, and Debbie looked at me and poked me in the ribs and said, "Aren't you glad you stayed with what you had?" It's not that the other woman's ugly or anything like this. Just,
Let's not go
Well, I would just in case she's listening somewhere down the road. But Debbie.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's funny. Like I knew it was coming too. I knew it because I was like, oh geez, and I knew it. We get out there trying to go. Don't you guys just say where you were? But I think when things come, I know that there's been more good times in our marriage than there has been bad. I know there's been more good times in my life than there has been bad. But we don't sometimes allow that to be our focus. So he says, think on these things. Number 9 says, those things which you have both learned and received and heard, seen in me, do. Now Paul's saying, what you've seen me do, operate in that. If nothing else, learn to walk with God like I'm walking with God. Use me as the example. And Paul's not saying I'm the best example. He's just saying, those things you see me do, then do them. You know? He goes on to say, then it says, and the peace of God shall be with you. Because Paul had peace. Paul knew his call. Paul knew what was going on. But he also knew that he wasn't perfect. Okay? He goes on to say this in verse 10. It says, but I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now, at least in your care, your care of me hath flourished again, wherein we were also careful, but we had no opportunity. Lacked opportunity. Now verse 11 says, not that I speak in respect of one. Now this is a good one for prosperity people to get a hold of. For word faith people to get a hold of. Because this is talking about being at peace no matter where you're at, realizing God, and expected in for your faith. Keeping your faith alive. At the times where base program maybe seemed like it might falter, Rob and Gail had to keep their faith alive. Had to keep focused. He says, now that I in respect of one I have learned, and for what I have learned, whatsoever state I am, therewithin be content. Now he's talking about, you're not talking about wanting to be broke or destitute or homeless. He's saying, understanding that where I'm at today is not where I'm going. Where I'm at today doesn't have to be final destination. And so many, look, let's use Peter and Judas. Did Judas do any bigger crime than Peter? He didn't, did he? But he chose defeat. He chose the defeat where he was at to be his final destination. Peter got off and forlorn and isolated himself and even at times, and then later after all this, he still thought about going back to being a fisherman. But he never got to the point where saying, this is where I'm at, my final destination. So many times we get into situations, we say, this is all it is. There's that old song, was it by Patty Page or something like that? If that's all there is, then let's just keep dancing. Let's bring on the booze and have a ball. Boy, it's bad when you remember lyrics like that. You must have grown up listening to them every day. I don't know. He's teasing, just teasing. Don't pick on her much, so she should get under, I know both have, it says, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. In other words, where he was at was the best place he could be at that time, but he knew it was not the end. He was coming out of it, no matter what it was. Even if he was abounding, he was coming out of it to a bigger abounding. He was coming out to a greater place. He goes on to say this, and wherever and in all things I am instructed both be full and be hungry. Be full of the word, be hungry after more. Be full of faith, be hungry after more. Be full of everything that there is to offer in this world and of the things of God, but be after more. Not be greedy. Not say there's, Jesse Duplantis, I listened to a sermon he has a couple times from the Southwest Believers Conference this year. And he's preaching, he says, I don't want anything. He says, I have all I want. Along those lines, he says, I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. He says, but the spirit within me hungers for more. He says, I have all these nice things. He says, I don't need anything else. He says, but the spirit in me challenges me to the next level. It takes me to the next, hungers for more. And it's not about greed. It's not about those things. And when we start hungering after the things of God, with a desire to get to pressing on to the highest calling in Christ Jesus, all the rest takes care of itself. It all comes along the path of this. Amen? And he says, in all things I've been instructed to be full and be hungry, to both abound and to suffer need. I can, and here's another one of our catch verses, here's another one of our favorite verses. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But it comes after a whole desire of a mindset change. After a whole thing of having to say, okay, what about this one? I can do all things. It doesn't matter what comes at me. It doesn't matter what the enemy has in store for me. It doesn't matter the mistakes I've made in my own life. I can do all things. I can abound or I can be abased, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So when I am being abased, I can still endure this for the season because it is only a season. And out of that season comes victory. Every trial, let's use this, every test, I don't like it if I'm using it, is it comes out of it a testimony. It can be a positive one or it can be a defeated one. Your choice. Your choice. How you see it, how you apply it, what you want to take away from it. Amen? Your thoughts are important because they help direct you towards God and the things of God. So, what's your thought? Are you ready to take on what the enemy brings to you and say, I will not be defeated, I will not be detoured, I will not be withheld? When those things happen, when you can say, I will not be defeated, my thought is, doesn't matter what the enemy does, doesn't matter what comes my way, I will win. Our mantra has been for the past week, it's not over till we win. It's not over till we win. The Bible says, and the thief has been caught, and he owes us 7 times. Now I'm not talking about the guy, I'm talking about the thief. I'm talking about the real thief. He owes us 7 times back. We are not done till we win. Amen?